Welcome everybody to our session today, the Always On Traveler. We're excited to have you here. Owen and I are going to talk about some cool trends going on in the travel industry, both global, mobile, millennial, and all things digital. So we're excited to talk to you guys. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My role is VP Client Development. I am based in our San Francisco office, and I oversee all the advertiser development teams for CJ in the West Coast. So that's San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Westlake Village. And my home airport is SFO, my favorite destination. Been there a couple times is Rio. If anyone's ever been there, I'd love to compare notes. And my sleep number is 58. Now, actually, I don't know if that's a real sleep number, but I thought it was funny anyway. I'm sure it's on the higher end. And so one of the other roles that I have at CJ is I'm responsible for our travel vertical, which is an internal team of about 30 people. It goes across products, analytics, sales, marketing, client development, publisher development. So all the CJ teams that are represented. And our focus in the travel vertical is to look for solutions that meet our publishers and our clients' needs. And so we're looking to find those solutions that help from an analytics perspective, from a publisher perspective, as well as from a product perspective. So we're really excited about this vertical. This is our first ever CJU where we're presenting from a vertical perspective. We're competing right now actually with the finance vertical, which is presenting boo 3 o'clock. And then there's a retail vertical one over there. This is travel. So let me pass it over to Owen.
So yes, as John said, my name's Owen Hancock. I'm the Director of Client Development in the UK. So that means my responsibilities are largely for overseeing the advertiser side of things that we look after in the London office. As you might have guessed, my local time zone is GMT, so please forgive me if I'm a little bit jet lagged and out of it. I only flew in on a Sunday night, so I'm still acclimatizing a little bit to the hot weather over here as well. But John and I discussed having different quotes, and I chose this John Wanamaker one because I think for me it's a very nice one to remind me of the industry that we work in and the breadth and the depth of which we've moved into in how we work, especially on reporting. So this idea of, 100 years ago that John Wanamaker said this? He doesn't know which half of his advertising spend is wasted. And our entire industry in affiliate is based on getting that amount to being as small as possible percentage, knowing exactly where our money goes and making sure that it's really accountable. So I think we're going to go into a little bit of framing some introductions.
So I'll tell you a little bit about the company that we keep. This is a lot of the brands are here actually in the room. But within the CJ network, we just have such amazing and great advertiser relationships. Working with some of the biggest brands in the industry. I think we have over 400 travel advertisers at CJ, and that's on a global perspective. So it's a really big and important vertical for us. And we're really happy to have people who've actually contributed to this presentation. I see them in the audience, a few of them from hotels, Travelocity, IHG, TripAdvisor, Ebates, and TUI. So thank you guys for contributing. But it's not only just about the advertiser, it's also about the publisher. This is CJ, we're a network. And we're really happy to have great big partners with us as well that are really working and focusing on driving travel sales. We've got Ebates, Good Shop, Retail Me Not, Offers, all driving big performance. And we've got specialty travel publishers. We also have great European publishers represented as well, right? We're going to have some examples from Top Cashback. We've got Quidco, Skyscanner, and Travel Match as well. So big brands. So it's a really growing and exciting group of clients and publishers. And not only do we have all these great partners on both sides of the fence, but combined, you guys really help us drive a very rich and very global and broad reach for our networks. This is looking at actually active clicks, and we're comparing against other networks using 2 different third-party companies to look at active clicks through CJ. And we're at over 50% market share. So if you want to grow your travel business, CJ is the place to do it. We're just the place where you're going to find the growth from a global perspective, as well as from an innovation perspective.
So I think John and I wanted to start off by framing a little bit of context around the direction of travel that's happening in the travel industry at the moment. So these stats here are from a nice e-marketer study that came out recently. And I just think it frames the situation we work in nicely to see the level of growth that's expected across the vertical over the course of the next 5-6 years. We're talking about, whilst a slowing rate of increase, really sizable amounts there. However, I think if we move on to the next slide, it's really interesting to highlight that growth is actually being largely driven by some of the emerging markets, as you might expect. So the 2015 to 2016, I don't know if any of you picked it up on the last slide, the average is 10% globally. So if you look at guys like China, they're way above that, twice the level of growth. Ditto with someone like Argentina. But the US and the UK, the more, experienced and perhaps more saturated markets, still expecting some growth, but at a slightly slower rate than some of the other markets. So that presents a challenge for us, right? We have to be really on it to keep up with the other markets that are happening. And we need to push and focus within our strategies. We drilled down a little bit deeper as well, just to look specifically at the US market. And so this is drawn over a slightly longer period of time. But I found it really interesting to note that actually, when you look at laptop and desktop sales, the volume of revenue that's coming in the travel vertical there is actually forecast to decline over the course of the next 5-6 years. And what we're really seeing is the growth coming purely from mobile and tablet. And so that's really going to frame some of the strategies that we talk about later on when we say, put mobile at the heart of what you're doing in your marketing strategy and in your affiliate strategy in general. We also wanted to pull out this piece from an Adobe Epsilon webinar that happened earlier in the year. I don't know how many of you know, but CJ is part of Conversant, which is in turn part of the Epsilon group. And it's been really valuable since we joined that group, a year or so ago, to get some hands on some of their information, their insight. And so this one pulls out the most frequently used devices over the different course of the day. So, starting out first thing in the morning, you're likely to pick up your mobile, maybe quick check for any messages. Then you're on your commute into work. You've got potential for in-car advertising, or maybe perhaps in London we don't get as many opportunities to drive around. So there's a lot of interactive time there on tablet as well as on mobile devices. Then you get into work, as you might expect, you're on your desktop there, maybe a bit of a break at lunchtime. And then in the evening you come back, there's a lot of chat around, dual screening as you might expect. But what really intrigues me as well is the addition of this wearable tech, which you can see coming down from the user at the top. So that's worn throughout the duration of the day, pretty much from start to finish. And I think why John and I felt it was important to include this slide is to frame the fact that you really need to have a cohesive cross-device strategy, and you need to be able to tailor your message to the appropriate times of the day and the appropriate devices. And so it's one of the things that we're really excited about at CJ is how we can help do that, report back on that, and actually offer slightly different messaging at different times of day and device as well.
So let's talk about the always-on traveler. Who is the always-on traveler? What are we describing here? What's really interesting is that it's not just about going and booking the airfare or the hotel or your car. It's actually much more. Now that the web has so much incredible content, so many apps are focused on giving you that experience. Many of the big brands here are focused on giving you a broader experience. You can now imagine your trip. You can explore the trip, think about it, maybe enrich what your original plan was down to something that's even broader. Then you book the trip. And then when you actually get on the trip and you're experiencing it, you might decide, I'm going to book some more. And then you share and you relive that. You post it to your blog, you post it to your social pages, and then hopefully that starts the cycle again from a retention perspective. So I think affiliate actually has a great opportunity to interact across many of these segments. Right now, I think there's obviously a big focus on the big ticket items, but there's a lot of opportunity to be involved in all of the travelers' decisions. So we're going to talk about 6 specific things that you could focus on in order to really enable and reach this always-on traveler in your program. And the first one is being mobile first. This is no surprise. This has been around for a while. But I think as the percentage of mobile views is growing so incredibly, as devices are just adopted everywhere, you have to be mobile first in order to succeed. We're going to talk about reaching the millennial traveler, influencing with content, personalizing the experience and localizing the message using data, and then finally offering more to your traveler than just kind of the core lines of business. So I'll kick it off first and I'll talk about mobile first. This is actual travel data from our display network. If you look at the amount of time that is spent on mobile and tablets or mobile devices, it's about 72% in the last 12 months. But But if you look at the amount of that traffic that's actually converting to a sale, it's only 33, 34%. And in some programs and affiliate, it's actually maybe more like 15 to 20, 25%. So there is a big gap between how much time people are spending on their devices and where they're actually purchasing. And I think some of that makes sense when you see the next slide, because you think, what's easy to do on your mobile device versus what requires research, what requires maybe comparing, maybe when you're looking for flights across multiple different places. This is using Google data from a Google report that came out recently, January to June of 2015, and what it's showing as year-over-year growth for search is growing in double digits. I mean, 30% plus, 40% plus, and hotels is really driving a lot of that from a search demand perspective, and that's no surprise. So what we're going to do is listen to a quick video from Ashley Smith.
All brands want to be mobile first in order to reach the traveler on the go, which is no longer a trend in the marketplace, but really a norm. However, reaching this traveler on a personal device is easier said than done. At Hotels.com, we ask ourselves, how does this traveler want to be reached, and when is the best time to reach them? In the affiliate marketing space, it really lends itself to be an efficient and effective way to reach this audience. The affiliate audience is already tied in and used to receiving push notifications from publishers within the network. Being able to work with our top partners to not only deal secret prices as well as mobile coupons has really lent itself to reach new customers and grow at incremental volumes we had not expected. There's definitely great momentum on the horizon for mobile in 2016, and at Hotels.com, we're excited to see what's to come.
So is Ashley in the room today? She might be. There she is. Thank you, Ashley. That was great. And Ashley found some really cool background to present against, so I was really happy with that. Okay, so let's talk about a couple examples of how you might engage mobile first in affiliate. And I think the first, to me, obvious way to do that is look to your publishers that have mobile apps and that have a mobile focus and start promoting with them. Ebates is one of the ones that I see a lot. Ebates pushes obviously very aggressively on mobile, and they've got a great Mobile Mondays push where you get extra incentives to participate, and they're pushing that as an app-only incentive. There was also a successful campaign that we did with hotels with promo codes where it was a placement that actually drove to more of a flash sale type of communication that did drive a lot of quality traffic. And of course, using Flash is something that's happening already in retail. So consumers are used to the idea of something on their mobile device that has a short window. I think that makes a lot of sense for driving growth. From a mobile future perspective, I think the next place to go is not just pushing on the app itself, but actually tracking somebody across apps and tying together their purchases. I think that's really, really important. And Hotels is getting ready to do some really neat stuff with that next year, or coming up soon, where let's just say you might be pushing an offer out on a publisher mobile app. We'll be able to track that from the publisher app to the Hotels app and track that purchase all the way through. We'll be able to deduplicate. I think it's going to drive we'll learn a lot more about that actual path, and it'll be a great way to get people to the app to actually purchase more. So we're excited about that work together.
So the next part that we're going to talk to is about some ideas about how to reach the millennial traveler, this always-on character that we've been discussing. So John and I did shed loads of research and looked at a lot of data around millennials, and all of it fundamentally points in a pretty similar direction. This one I really like just because it highlighted for me who the millennials are and why they matter. So they're this 18 to 30 age group. We see it defined slightly differently in different places, but I like how this pulls it out because it shows the frequency with which they travel. And if you're looking at that across both business and vacation, you're seeing your millennials are traveling much more often than any other group of traveler. So that's part of why they need to be at the heart of your marketing strategy. And the other part, I guess, is the level of influence they're going to have in the future. We looked at a lot of different studies that say things like in the next 3 years, millennials will represent over 50% of business travel, for example. And so that really represents a big group within a relatively small proportion of who those people are. I think another thing that we wanted to highlight speaks to some of the points that John was mentioning earlier on, which is just that fundamentally when millennials shop, they're a lot more comfortable doing it on their mobile than anywhere else or than any other age group. So this shows the average for 2013 of people that have used their mobile to help plan their trip. And the average was 39%. The millennials were significantly higher than that. And if you look at that transition to 2014, you see a fantastic jump in the average. Great, it's all coming up. More people are using mobile. We've discussed that. But millennials, they're still increasing and they're still higher than the average. So that element of your marketing strategy needs to be spot on to be able to hit these guys. There was one other point that we wanted to highlight about the way in which millennials shop and that we think is really intriguing to the way that you develop a strategy towards them as well. So what this graph is showing at the moment is data from some UK travel agencies. And the darkest grey column on there is the average amount of time between when a person has made a booking for their travel event and when they're actually going away on that one. I think in the majority of these instances, it's holidays. So as you might expect, people that are booking a luxury holiday, they're planning a lot more in advance. They're booking a lot further out. People that are taking their families away, it's a similar sort of deal. They need to be more planned. But the millennials, as you might imagine, are going to be notably less than the average. But what really surprised me is just how much less. That's less than half the amount of time that other people take. So some of this data is, I'm afraid, confidential, which is why I've had to take the scale off. But roughly speaking, we're talking about millennials taking maybe a week or two in advance of booking the majority of their trips, versus this luxury is looking more like about a month or two, maybe slightly longer than that on that scale. So apologies not to be able to give a bit more detail. Quiz me afterwards when there's a little bit more privacy, perhaps. But I think fundamentally the important point to take away from that, from my side, is that you don't want to be hitting millennials with conversion-orientated things like offers or cashback well in advance. You need to be timing that to be hitting them just before that peak period where they're about to be traveling.
We see three converging trends. Millennials will be the largest customer segment for hotels over the next 5 to 10 years. The demographic on Ebates is shifting towards millennials, and the use of smartphones to book travel is growing at a triple-digit pace on Ebates. So we know we have to deliver a fun and engaging experience to capture the millennial travel shopper. One of the ways that we're doing this is through Mobile Mondays. One Monday every month, we offer higher cash back for about a dozen merchants exclusively through the Ebates mobile app. We market this through push notifications, which creates a sense of immediacy and helps engage the customer wherever they're at. We can also extend these capabilities to allow individual partners to do their own mobile flash sales, with offers lasting as short as 3 hours. We know we're doing something right because travel sales through smartphones have increased nearly 300% through the first 6 months of this year, and on the mobile app it's even more impressive. We're seeing more than 400% growth.
So I think that really did a great job of highlighting some of the practical things that they've been doing to really make the most of putting mobile at the heart of what they're doing in targeting those millennials, but also, again, great to see some success with doing more last minute and more flash-orientated travel initiatives in this area. So what we're going to do now is just take a quick walk through a practical example with one of the advertisers that we work with in the UK. So it's Thompson. I don't know if many of you in the room have heard of them. They're part of the TUI group, which is one of the largest travel groups in all of Europe, so if not the largest. So they do some great work, especially in the UK. They've got a really big program, and they do a lot of innovative stuff within the affiliate space, so it's a lot more nuanced. But one of the things that their scale really allows them to do, which I like within how they market to millennials, is they can create sub-brands for their different groups that they're trying to market to. So in this instance, they've created Thompson Scene, which is a specific brand and a segmented way of communicating with that group of millennials, which is pretty much entirely segregated from the rest of the marketing that they do. So some of the great stuff that they do is making their content a lot more shareable on the website for these users. It's a nice example here that just pulls out different ways in which you might come to the decision of what type of scene holiday that you want to go on. But one of the things that we didn't actually highlight earlier on, because we're a little bit pushed for time, I wanted to speak about all the data under the sun, but unfortunately only an hour here. So quiz me again later on if you want to hear more depth. But millennials absolutely love sharing stuff. And I think at the heart of any good strategy is creating content which can be really shared around and pushed out to other friends and other people who might interact with those potential customers. So a great starting point here, pre-booking, but also that's not where the sharing stops. There's a nice example here of an entirely separate Instagram account that the Thompson Scene brand operates. And look, it's not integral in actually selling the holiday at this point in time. It's just about getting people engaged with this separate brand and knowing that they're there for that age group and that demographic. And so this particular example, in fact, pulls out what your cocktail name is. Mine is apparently Oompa Loompa Hurricane, which I'm not sure if I'm necessarily too pleased with, but it's an interesting thing. And in fact, what I really like about this is when I took that example, I mentioned it to someone in my office. And by an hour later, every person in my office had said, oh, could you just forward that round to me? Or what's my name? Mm-hmm. And so it's just a great example of how keen people are to share very simple content like this. But then taking it a little bit more affiliate specific and some of the things that I really enjoy about working with these guys. So Thompson has got a single page on the top cashback website. In this instance, what I really like is on this Thompson page, there's a default rate for all Thompson holidays. It's 2% cashback. It's a fine rate, but they've increased the rate specifically for the Thompson Scene holidays. They can do that with a product feed. Great. We can adjust the commissions dynamically, and it's a decent user experience. And you'll always see a jump in conversions off the back of that sub-brand, off the back of it, because you're paying more for it, and that's great. But one of the things that I like even more is the ability to pull that out as a separate line within there. And so those millennial users that are coming along are able to see that there's a segmented part, even within the cashback rates, where you can be highlighting that as a unique experience just for them.
So influence with content, what do we mean here? I think you can look at content in two different ways. Content is either blogs traditionally, but it also could be looked at as curation of content. So you're actually trying to pull together relevant information for specific audiences. So it doesn't just have to be on the blog side. And a good example of that I like in our network is Bring Fido. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, but those of you who have a pet may have. They do a great job pulling together options for people who are planning a trip with their pet. I think that's kind of fun. And of course, the mother of all content, TripAdvisor, we all use it to check out our trips. That's where it started. There's just such good information up there that people are sharing and where you can learn to kind of enrich your travel experience and think about what you're going to do you may not have been aware of before you started your trip.
Content relationships are really growing in their importance for OTAs and suppliers alike. I think that most of these established programs have a significant amount of revenue coming from coupon sites, deal sites, loyalty sites. So they're all asking that same question. Most of these sites are saying, what are we going to rely on for our next avenue, our next opportunity for growth? And I think that content relationships and content sites are a good answer to that question, because content sites allow for consumers who may be in the early stages of that research process for that vacation and deciding where they're going to go. They become educated and informed on the content site, and later that translates into a booking on the OTA or the supplier site.
Travelocity has been a great partner for us. So let's give you some examples of curation, and this is a little bit more geared on the content side. But you can see when you're thinking about content isn't, it's kind of similar to the desktop mobile thing. You're getting a lot of views, you're probably getting a lot of clicks, but are you getting a lot of conversions from content? And the answer right now is no, you're not. You're really thinking of it more as kind of top of the funnel where you're generating awareness. You are going to get some click-through, some sale, and you're going to get some residual too. When a good post comes out, it can stay alive for quite a while. But really from a content perspective, I think you need to think about how to get your content provider you're talking to or the blogger to post with you from a native perspective, right? Not just repurpose something you've already created, but actually talk to your brand and talk about it in their voice. And I don't know if anyone who was here at the session before us was a content session. We just hired a great new hire, Jessica Woodbury, who's a great content expert. She can help you with this. But from a content perspective, also I think when you're looking at how to make that work, maybe don't think about using increases on commission. Think about those little helpful dollops of money you can give in the form of sponsorships, right? $500 here, $100 here, $1,000 there, depending on the site, actually can go quite a long way. And if you haven't already gotten yourself mobile or content certified on either side of the house, please do, because this is going to open up a whole world of better content distribution for you with CJ.
I wanted to start off by just pointing out a couple of different types of personalization that I see. So one of the most important things that I think we do is we take this initial user who we don't know and we want to turn that into an individual. But what's great is as we find out more and more information about this actual individual, we can tailor our message towards him. So we might find information about him from the affiliate that he's coming from. So say this guy goes to a cashback site, we can create a custom landing page based on where he's coming from, and that's going to provide a lot more security for him. He knows that his clicks tracked, his cashback will track. Great, we'll see some more conversions of it. But you might also want to do things, I think we've seen in the UK certainly a trend for more co-branded retargeting happening. So from when a user has come through, like this guy here might have done from a cashback site, in turn to a retailer and then not purchase, to see that retailer and cashback site in tandem do a piece of retargeting off the back of that. And we've seen some great results coming from that. You might also see personalization coming from previous interactions with the merchant, of course, more standardized retargeting, but also customizing the CRM experiencing and changing on-site experiences as well. And then finally, the personal information that we have about this guy. One of the great things about being part of the Conversant group is the level of data that we have about individuals. And so being able to tailor that message based on what we've seen as previous purchase history or demographic information that we might have about him, that's a really powerful way of working. I then wanted to just spend a moment to talk about why personalization is so important to me. And there's two real reasons. One is, of course, improving the user journey and making what you're doing more relevant. But what I think is also really critical is about maximizing the value out of each individual that we're marketing to. So as an advertiser, you've got a whole host of different things that you might value. Obviously, the revenue coming in is great, but you might well value new customers more than existing customers. And you might say, oh, look, I've got some more margin-intensive resorts or locations that I want to push people towards. But don't forget to look at someone who might be an existing customer anyway and say, there's value in that person. We just need to maximize that person. And so maybe it's upselling to that particular individual to send them to that more margin-intensive resort. There's also that side from a publisher perspective. So you want to have a good user experience for your customers, of course, but you want to maximize the amount of revenue that's coming out of each individual user that's exiting your site. And doing things like increasing the conversion rate is a great way of doing that. And so I think when we work together like that, we basically are able to maximize the existing marketing budgets that we have and make them work in a smarter way to be more profitable for all of us. And that's why I'm so excited to see from some of the examples that we've had so far with personalization at CJ, great results like this 164% increase in return on ad spend. Obviously, it's working better for the advertiser and you're seeing that uplift there. But to see that conversion rate improve and the EPC improve for publishers as well shows that we're making both sides of the equation more profitable. So it's really pleasing to see.
Here at IHG, we are committed to creating a personalized experience to all of our customers, and we want to make sure that we stay connected with the traveler throughout the guest journey, from the moment that they're researching our hotels to the time that they stay with us and that they leave. We want to make sure we're providing them a personalized experience through their entire stay. So even from the moment that they're looking to do an initial research and looking on our websites at our various brands and hotels that we have to offer, we want to make sure that we're providing them the right content and the right message that is tailored to them. We want to make sure everything that we have is going to be relevant as they research and find the right property. We've also developed a number of different products and tools to help that customer along their journey as well. Things such as mobile check-in, which allows them to check in from anywhere in the world. We've also developed the IHG Translator app, which is available for the iWatch, which will help you as you travel abroad and find your destination. So these are the types of things that we're working on. We also want to focus on the in-room stay as well. So as we get more personalized, we're going to be able to provide that person a firm or soft pillow, whatever their preference is. Or if they like Coca-Cola or if they like Diet Coke, we want to make sure we have that stocked in the room. These are all things that we're looking to do at IHG to make sure that we are connecting that guest journey from beginning to end. We're striving to make them feel that they have a home away from home and ensure that we provide a level of service that is unique to every individual.
Look, it's great to see that guys like IHG are putting personalization at the heart of what they're doing and recognizing individuals. But what we want to do next is just talk about a couple of neat affiliate examples as well that are just a nice little way to show some of the successes that we've had. So this particular example here speaks to one of the things that I mentioned earlier on about recognizing an individual as an existing customer and then working out how to make the most out of him. So this guy here is a regular shopper with this particular travel group in total, and he books every year. Great, he's an existing customer. It's easy to say, look, why are we going to offer him a discount, or why would we give him cash back? He'll shop with us anyway. But what I really like about this example is people have worked out that they can get more out of him if they communicate to him specifically. So what's happened here is the travel provider has worked with Quidco, one of the cashback partners in the UK, to send out a targeted message purely to this guy. They've done some database matching to make that happen. And then they've used their personalized system to be able to offer an exclusive cashback rate as well. And so his different cashback rate is on this Sensatori side of things, which is a premium set of resorts, and they can afford to do higher cashback rates on that because there's more margin there, but it also gets more value out of this guy. And I happen to know that this is a one-to-one personalized offer because I don't know if any of the guys in this room recognize that man's photo there, but he's actually a former CJ colleague of mine, John Colson. And so now all of his emails come through to my email at work. And so when I clicked...
Does he know you're showing this?
He doesn't actually.
Okay.
But yeah, when I clicked through on this offer, because I thought, oh, that's a nice cashback rate, what I see is, we're really sorry, but you're not eligible. But that's perfect, right? Because I don't shop with that brand on a frequent basis, and it wouldn't be right to be offering me those rates. You want to give me something to bring me through the door instead and get a different type of value out of me. This is a really nice example that I like as well with another publisher that we're working with in Europe called Epteca. And what Epteca do is they buy a load of purchase data from guys that have already booked their travel plans at the starting point. So either they booked a holiday or they booked their flights. And then they provide follow-up information to those guys that's specific around what they know those people are doing. So in this particular example, you might know that I've booked a flight to Santa Barbara, and I'm flying British Airways and I'm flying long haul. So they not only know that I might be in the market for luggage because I'm booking flights, but they also know that I'm flying long haul. So I'm in the market for a decent sized bag that can pack up enough stuff for me for a good week or so, and I don't have to pay for it. But separately, if this guy down the bottom is booking a short haul flight, for example, traveling with EasyJet to somewhere else in Europe, then we can target him with a different ad that is specific to where we know he's traveling. And so maybe because there's no charge for carry-on luggage, but there is a charge for hold luggage with EasyJet, we target him with a 40-litre capacity bag and a particular piece of content around that as well. So what we're going to do now is talk through localization to a certain extent, which is perhaps a more niche part of that personalization message. So for me, what localization for the modern traveler is just fundamentally recognizing that people in different markets have different needs, maybe different languages, different cultural norms, and changing your message accordingly to those people. So we're going to talk through a nice example with the fantastic Mr. Dent over here and myself. So John and I are both come here to CJU. We're doing the same presentation. We work for the same company. But given our different locations as a starting point, we need to be targeted in very different ways and receive very different messages. So I pulled out a handful of examples about what's different for us. So for example, I'm taking a long haul flight, as we mentioned. So, I need different types of luggage potentially. my phone doesn't work abroad, or at least I get charged for using the internet on the go. So push notifications aren't that relevant for me, but for John coming from San Francisco, that's certainly a lot more pertinent. And then as a very specific but perhaps more nuanced example, language is really important. And I don't know if you noticed, but localization for John is localization with a Z. Localization for me from the UK is localization with an S. But, you know, subtleties like that are important in the way that you address a market and you address your different affiliates and your different audiences in those spaces. We also wanted to talk about the handful of elements that are really critical to feeding the types of solutions that we're talking about. So obviously it's important to have geofence data, or IP addresses, whilst not perfect, still play a large role, but also things like the weather in the location where your user is, or being able to push them a notification at that particular point in time. And then subsequently, these are just a handful of particular examples of how I see those being used. So the local relevancy of offers is obviously integral. If you're showing me an offer which is for a particular hotel or for a particular destination where I can't reach that, that's just going to annoy me. I don't want to see it, and you're wasting your time as well. But context similarly might be around things like weather. You know, if it's pouring down with rain in London, which it frequently does, then your audience is going to be much more in the market for seeing holidays in lovely sunny locations. And language, as we mentioned earlier on, is not necessarily just about translating into the right language, but it's also about the way and the style in which you communicate with those specific affiliates that are based in those areas. So not just, you know, adjusting the language on a banner, for example, but changing the style of communication.
Localization is really important to TUI with our Thompson and First Choice brands in the UK, because it's enabled us to be more targeted in reaching customers and also tailor our offers accordingly. So when we've got flights leaving from airports across the UK, we can target those regionally. The localization activity we've run in the past has been really successful. We've been able to increase the relevance to our audience, and also the channel lends itself to being really reactive. So we've been able to target specific flights and destinations in line with business needs. Some of the activity we've run in the past has included targeted cashback rates for increasing demand at specific departure airports, and also recruiting and utilising regionally focused affiliates, so we can be a lot more tailored in our offering, and that may include giving them bespoke creative to use and publish on their sites. In the future, I think there's going to be a lot more developments in this space. Two examples being mobile, where I think there'll be lots of publisher innovations to increase the opportunities for advertisers to utilise geo-targeting and geofencing and really reach customers on the move. Secondly, I think from a data perspective, data will get richer and richer, and there's the opportunity for advertisers to really layer on additional sets of data to become more targeted. Two examples being third-party data from publishers, as well as their own first-party data, but also feeds from external sources such as weather feeds to adapt the creative.
So we've got a quick example of localization with a European airline that we've worked with. I have a little test to see what people's geographic knowledge is like. Can anyone tell me what city is highlighted by this pin? Good knowledge, guys. Nicely done. It is indeed Edinburgh. So in this particular example, there was a localized need. And so this airline had a lot of excess capacity departing from Edinburgh, with their airline or their planes were departing half empty. And so they were losing a lot of money on that. So they wanted to create a way to drive more people to depart from Edinburgh Airport. So the first thing they did was a really interesting point for me, is they defined what local meant in this situation. And so they did a little study to see how far outside of Edinburgh people would travel in order to get a better deal. And they found it was actually 3 hours people would drive in order to get a bit of a discount on their flight out. So it surprised me, I have to say. And so that leads on to the next point, which is they had to make their offer better. So they did it largely with discounts, but they also did some targeted cashback rates as well, which worked very successfully at a different point in time. But it's not enough to just highlight or to create that offer. You have to highlight it as well. So the next thing they said was they spread the news with a load of targeted newsletters. They worked with publishers like Top Cashback and Quidco on the cashback side of things. and then some of the core voucher publishers as well that have good information about where their users live. And they said, right, we only want to send this message to these people because it's a waste, as we said before, to hit other people that aren't finding that information or that discount relevant. But they didn't limit it just to people that lived within that 3-hour zone. They also went in search of the people that were looking for flights departing from Edinburgh in the first place. So they worked with price comparison sites like Skyscanner, Travel Supermarket, Cheap Flights, to say anyone that is searching for flights departing from Edinburgh, we want to be at the top of their mindset, and we want to increase our rates to those guys so that we can be very prominent in that space. And then as a final and more subtle example, what they also did was these guys aren't based in Edinburgh. I don't think the majority of their people are even based in the UK, but they took the time to speak to local publishers in and around Edinburgh and say, right, you guys work with the local audience here. What do you need from us to be able to reach the users in a relevant way? And these guys said, in a couple of particular examples, we want customized creative. Edinburgh Airport, for example, is an affiliate on the CJ network. And they said, we just want banners that say, flights departing from Edinburgh, click here.
So I think the sixth point we wanted to make was offering more to your traveler. So when travelers are coming and looking at that initial phase of their experience, what can you do to help them understand that there's more for them? They can plan a more complete trip. It kind of harkens back to calling a travel agent back in the who knows when, where you could actually get the full thing done, plan your full trip. I think now what we're seeing is the major OTAs are actually pulling forth in their headers of their homepages specific content about the entire experience. And that happens just from the very beginning. Maybe you want to plan something that's Broadway tickets for 2 or a tour, or like we saw in the video. Maybe it's a pub crawl. But you actually can see that through the OTA experience. And of course, there are also guides for how you can get more out of your experience overall. And you can go and actually monetize the guides by actually selling different offers. So let's hear from Orshaka.
At TripAdvisor, we recognize the need for the whole trip solution in travel. And we are making advances to achieve that. We think that's where our industry will be focused in the next few years. Our site has evolved from a hotel review site to a site where users can easily plan, compare, and book all aspects of their travel. We introduced our instant booking platform, and with partners in hotel groups, chains, and OTAs, now 235,000 properties all over the world are instantly bookable on the TripAdvisor site. While we remain deeply rooted in the hotel category, we set our sights high, and with the commitment to the whole trip solution, we continue our expansion into the restaurant, attraction, and vacation rental categories in order to help even more users with their travel needs. Our users are truly a global community, and we think it's going to continue to be important to offer the hundreds of millions of consumers that come to TripAdvisor every month a localized experience in their language anywhere they are in the world with whatever device they choose to use in order to plan and book their perfect trip.
We love working with TripAdvisor, a lot of fun, and right near our office in San Francisco. I'll give you one example and then we're going to wrap up. So I think one way you can try to bring to life the experience component of affiliate is in communications as an advertiser out to your publishers, really highlight that opportunity. I know you're going to focus mostly on the higher ticket items, but where you can highlight that opportunity to do more on the experience, I think you're going to get some benefit. So we're going to wrap it up. We had 6 strategies. Hopefully you guys learned something, got a few ideas. And let's head out and have a cocktail. Thank you.